no skill whatsoever when it comes to flying that, and quite frankly that thing scares me because it's worth a lot of money and I don't want to be responsible for such things. But I am at the drawing board, and this is because many of you over the course of the last few months have been asking me to do some updated leopard maps for the area given what's been going on. And I thought, well, since I'm in the tent, I might as well know there's no better time than to do leopard maps for you. So I've elegantly drawn a very out of proportion map. I do apologize. Please do not quote me on sizes here. This is not exact at all. But essentially what I've drawn is the northern block of the Sabi Sands. So you've got Buffelshoek here, Djuma, Torchwood, then the southern area, and then the western sector, Singita on that side, Ndolozi there, Mala Mala over here, and then Manyeleti and Kruger Park on the top and on the right. So this is the map that I have got and I've drawn out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to populate it with the male leopards first, and I'll show you exactly where all the males currently are spending their time and what the territories are shifting like. And I did do this about a year ago. I think it was maybe about a year ago I did this, and it will be very interesting for those of you that did watch a year ago who have those maps, because I know some of you did copy them out and redo them and do them quite nicely for me. It'll be really interesting to compare the two from last time. I might actually even still have it here. I'll scrounge around through and see if I can find it, but I'm going to redo it and see what we've got and see how things have shifted according to the current status as of today and as of where I know some of the individuals of the leopards are. So I'll do males and I will do females this afternoon, and we'll try and discuss what that means and what the implications are of all of these leopards moving around. Of course, I'm going to try and do this outside because it is beautiful outside and there's a breeze. It is super hot inside that tent, but on my left hand side is going to be a bit of a problem because, as you can see, there is a delightful dark array of clouds that are coming straight towards us. So I feel like not only myself but Byron and Ali are going to be in for an absolute treat this afternoon. If this blows in, I think we might get slightly wet, and I'm quite glad that we're rather at the tent than anywhere else. Cool. Now, let's start with our leopards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from right on the top, and then I'm going to work my way down, and we'll kind of just spread out as we go. And we'll start in different colors. Obviously, I don't have enough colors for all the male leopards, so you guys are going to have to make different colors over the circles that I draw, and just so that you guys can work out what's going on. So we're going to start up in Buffelshoek. At the moment, Buffelshoek is a bit of an unknown. We don't have too many answers as to what's going on here. We know that there are two male leopards that get seen here. That is of Gajima and another male known as Mfokazi, which means I think it's the intruder, or I think that's what it is. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, those two leopards get seen in Buffelshoek. Gajima the other day when he had his fight was over here with Hukumuri, so they fought just on the cut line over here. Gajima went north, Hukumuri obviously came south. So Gajima theoretically, as far as we understand it, is in this sort of area and maybe a little bit more. So that's Gajima. That is there. Mfokazi, sorry, my spelling is all over the place. Mfokazi has been seen in these dotted around in this area and then down towards Simambili. So what I'm going to do is, obviously he won't go outside the gate, but I'm just going to do an overlap of him. I'll change color so that we don't kind of get this all confused. But basically, so this is basically what we're seeing from Mfokazi, who is not really a reliable territorial male. We don't really know where his territory lies. He seems to be in and out. And so those two are the ones that are kind of competing for Buffelshoek. Gajima might extend a little bit more towards the Kruger and into Manyeleti. I don't really know. Obviously, we don't drive on Buffelshoek, and updates on him are very few and far between. In fact, both of these leopards, they both seem to be quite shy individuals, and so seeing them is quite tough. So I don't know how far the extent is of Gajima's territory, but what we'll do is we'll have a talk as to why I think his territory stops here. And there is a reason for it. There is another two individuals that would fit into this framework over here, and so just now we'll get into that and as to why I think Gajima hasn't moved around. What interests me though massively with Gajima is that he is not a small leopard. He is in no way a old leopard. He's still got a lot of fight in him, and I'm very surprised that his assault on Djuma hasn't taken place. I am surprised that we have not seen him moving into this area, and the other day with Hukumuri it seemed as though he backed down, which is pretty weird in my eyes. I would have thought a big male like that certainly would have tried to push in to this area, given that he's been on the fringes for so long. So I wonder what's happening with him and why he's not moving around. It interests me that he is not an individual that is staking a claim here. I wonder if maybe just the sheer brazen attitude of Hukumuri is something that is putting Gajima off, and why he's not moving in, and why Mfokazi maybe is so kind of in and out. He gets random sightings of him in random places and seems to kind of go about the place without really being picked up too often. So he kind of extends away all over the place. It's really interesting stuff. Right, so that's the first two males that we've done over there. The third male that we would have, that we would probably start going towards the left, is Hukamuri himself, because, well, Hukamuri is obviously the talk of the town at the moment, and as of today, according to where he's scent marked, where we had him this morning, there is going to be a bit of a map here that is going to shock you, and this is exactly where Hukamuri is at the moment. So he is going from this all the way through there, around like this, through here, and around like that. That is all the Hukamuri male at the moment. Hukamuri. Right. Prior to 3-4 weeks ago, this area here, this whole Djuma, Hofmans, Little area, was all Tingana. This is all being taken in the last 3-4 weeks. In fact, that's probably when we started to see him more and more, and he has just pushed himself all the way through. And today, this is where we had him, was over here. So that is how far he has pushed. He walked from here today all the way scent marking and then up into this area and was continuing in that direction, which is dangerous because obviously we know Tandian Cub, this is their section over here. So that is Hukamuri's territory at the moment, absolutely massive, and we'll get into why he's got maybe such a big territory and what's going on with that when we get back to us just now. But before we get into all of that, let's send you back across to Byron and those snoozy lines. Give you and see whether or not we can be fairly accurate about what we're doing at the same time. Now, when we left you, we said that Hukamuri was slap bang boom in the middle of all of this and has done some serious movement during the course of the last few weeks, which is obviously quite interesting. So, Peter, you want to know whether or not any leopards are going to stand up against Hukamuri and whether or not anyone's going to stop this marauding male in terms of his advancement and what that means, obviously, to some of our other leopards. So, Hukamuri, at the moment, the only one that could have stepped up to him to stop what is happening currently was Tingana. Now, Tingana, something is not right with him. Obviously, he's a shadow of his former self. 2 months ago, I don't think Tingana would have let this male cross this line at all and would have been onto him like a flash. But something is not right with Tingana. What that is, I don't know. He's evidently losing weight quite quickly, and he just doesn't seem to be his same dominant self and is really not pushing. If that means that he met up with Hukamuri, I don't know. But like I say, this morning I asked every single ranger that I could see and speak to this morning as to whether or not anyone has ever seen Hukamuri as far east as this. The answer was a categorical no. So nobody has ever picked up Hukamuri further than Hofmans and this little western side of Djuma over here, which is where we've been seeing him a lot. We've kind of been seeing him on the western, kind of going up and down. But today he made a massive push. He kind of, like I say, came all in this area. And what we've been seeing is that we've been seeing Tingana hanging around in this section. So I'm going to draw what Tingana's old territory was, and then I'm going to just shade out where he's lost. So Tingana effectively at one point was patrolling this whole area here. So he was going like this, all the way through here, around, I mean, obviously Kruger he didn't go into, but in Coral he did go into Torchwood like this, and then around and to the gate and back down. He also actually went a little bit into Mala Mala sometimes as well, but those were infrequent movements. So he did go to Chitwan and Coral fairly regularly, but I'm going to shade out what he's lost over the course of the last 6 months. So what we're seeing from Tingana now is this section over here. This is where we've been seeing him over the last little bit, is pretty much a small little teardrop pattern like that. So all of this is no longer anything to do with Tingana. He has lost all of this terrain to other males lately, which indicates that we have an issue with Tingana. Now, what that means is that we have a lot of big problems with Hukamuri because all of the females that encompass this territory currently have cubs. Every single one of these females that we know of, Tingana mated with, so Kuchava, Tandi, Shadow, theoretically all those cubs come from him. Because he's lost all of this territory, Hukamuri and the various other males that we'll get into are going to be causing a lot of problems for those cubs, and if he finds them, he will kill them. So even Shadow's cub, while she is a year old or over a year old, she is still in massive danger from Hukamuri, as is Shadow, as is Tandi, because they will try and defend their cubs as best they can, and that's going to lead to a lot of problems. So this is a major issue, and Tingana's health and the way that he's going about things means there's something wrong. A dominant, healthy Tingana, I don't think, would have backed down the way that he backed down and as quickly as he recessed out of this area. So now this sort of indication of Tingana means that there's some, like I say, we have to prepare that he is going to eventually be evicted because of the pressure that's not only coming from Hukamuri this way, but I am going to show you that there's going to be males coming this way and this way. Now, Rebecca in FC wants to know where Sindile's territory sits in all of this. Rebecca, the answer to that is I have absolutely no idea, given that we have not seen Sindile in over a year, in fact, longer than that. So who knows where he's ended up. The last time he was seen in the whole of this northern sector was somewhere over there. So that is the Sindile mark over there. And from there, it seems as though his movement went southwards and down into Sabi. And I reckon that he's somewhere in the Kruger National Park. That's where my guess is. But that was the last visual of Sindile in this section. Right. So we will carry on with this, and we will then add the other males that are in this area, and we'll get more into this discussion of male leopards. But while we do that, let's send you back across to Byron. And I wonder if those lions are going to wake up with the approaching storm. Right. Now, Byron was chatting about Anderson Male. Anderson Male is obviously the one that everybody is thinking about and wondering, why has he not participated in this takeover and what has been going on? I think if you had gone back 8 months ago, we would have all said that either Gajima or Anderson were going to be the ones to push out Tingana and shift into this section that we're just talking about with Hukamuri. Obviously, that hasn't taken place, and why is that? Right, I'll tell you exactly why that is. So Anderson Male, his territory, as you can see on this board, now remember, this is not to exact scale, so these territories, while they look like small dots and bigger dots, they're not really. I mean, obviously, the Buffelshoek is a massive area, much bigger than Djuma, and so, these are just relative to the actual sizes. So it would be really nice if somebody overlaid this onto a map, onto a real size spectrum of a map. But what you can see from Anderson is Anderson has all of this, all the way into Singita or Ottawa, Singita down to the Sand River, along the Sand River, all the way along and towards the end of the Mala Mala boundary. This area is absolutely massive. It is huge. So he doesn't need to expand his territory anymore. Also, what's keeping him busy is the amount of females that he's mated with in this section. So he has got currently down here, he's got Moya, or the Nanga female, who's just on the Londolozi boundary. She's just got 2 brand new cubs. He's been mating with Shadulu's mother, which is the Ingrid Dam female, so I believe she's got a new cub. She's got Insele, which is up over here. Tiani hangs around in this section over here. We've got a few other females that are around, and so for him, he doesn't really need to be pushing in this. And we don't know what is also in Singita or further beyond. So at the moment, I think he's been kept so busy by the females here that extending this way just didn't seem like an option at that time. He's got a lot of pressure coming from the male right down in the south called the Flat Rock male, who is also inside of Londolozi. And so his I think his focus is probably trying to keep that Sand River section northwards up towards us than it is to push west into Djuma. I don't think he's really into that because of the amount of other leopards that are already down there and females that he can mate with. So his time is being spent patrolling a massive territory already. And because, Tingana put up a bit of a brave fight and stood up to him a few times, I think he just decided, well, that's Tingana's area. I'm going to focus here. Now, since Hukamuri has come in, I don't think Anderson has actually ventured this far up in a long time. It's not to say that he won't. What could happen is Shadulu could be in heat. Anderson meets up with Shadulu and Shadulu drags him in here, and then you might find that he starts to notice, hang on a second, there's a gap, and he might start pushing in. So I wouldn't write Anderson off just yet. The thing is, though, is he's got such a huge territory at the moment. There's no need for him to be pushing up this way. At the end of the day, the Sand River is prime real estate, as Byron will attest, and that means that he'd rather be on the Sand River than in an area with no river whatsoever. Like I was saying, that there is another male called the Flat Rock male. So he, for those of you that don't know Flat Rock male, very similar looking to Hukamuri in a way, also very orange eyes, not quite as kind of puffy and bulky and stocky as what Hukamuri is. He's a bit bigger and he's got a bit more of a kind of longer face, but he's right down south of Anderson, so he's also a possibility that could eventually show up. And in fact, I've actually seen him all the way up here on Simambili as well before. So very, very kind of interesting on this western side, but that's the reason why we're not seeing Anderson coming in. While I kind of figure out all the other males and populate this map even further, let's send you back across to Byron, who I believe has got a big bull elephant, and well, I'm sure that elephant is petrified at the sight of Byron's biceps. Well, earlier we were boiling, but luckily for us, there has come some cloud and well, there is no sign of any sun anymore, and there's a bit of a breeze. So we're in a situation where at least it's a fairly more comfortable than it was earlier. Earlier it was like being in a little sweat box and a sauna, and poor Fergus was, I think, having a moment of complete meltdown where he was dripping from head to toe when trying to set up drones and various other things. But anyway, we're all good now, which is good. Right, so I was into this, and there's only two more males that I wanted to address in this whole thing, because really those are the only two that matter, and I know both of you will, well, both of them are leopards that we are all very familiar with. Well, the majority of us anyway. Those of you that are slightly newer might not know these two leopards, but the one is Quarantine, so Mr. Q over here, who has been very quiet of late. I wonder where Mr. Q has been. I think he's been dealing with daddy issues with Inkanyeni, who's got new cubs, so I think Mr. Q is involved in that. And so he's kind of hanging around, like I say, Torchwood into Buffelshoek, and that's why I don't think Gajima pushes this way. I was saying earlier that Gajima, I think, sticks to more to the sort of western side of Buffelshoek, but, you know, Torchwood, I mean, Mr. Quarantine is often going from Torchwood into Buffelshoek and into this area here. So I think that keeps Gajima that way. How far Gajima goes into Manyeleti, none of us know. So his territory could extend out a little bit further than what I've drawn here, but roughly that's kind of what we know about. But Quarantine, he goes through Torchwood, down through Nkoro, has been going through Chitwa, half of Chitwa. So sorry, I went a little bit too far. And like I say, the shapes of these are not quite right. Nkoro and Chitwa and Cheetah Plains are much more long and narrow, but I ran out of space, and so that's why they short sort of blocks. They're actually long rectangles instead. And so he goes through there, and then he goes down to Cheetah Plains. Now, in terms of the dam, Fergus, if you wanted to know where the dam is, there we go. There's Chitwa Dam over there, and then the runway would be over here. So there we go. That's Chitwa Dam and the runway. And so that's Quarantine's area at the moment, and he's kind of moving inside here. Down at the bottom is the other male, which is his brother, and that is Kunyuma. So Kunyuma is down here. I think I'm spelling this right. I hope I am. Kunyuma over there. Right, so Kunyuma's down at the bottom, very successful at the moment, a number of cubs, doing fantastic work on Mala Mala, and is really very, very cool. Now, so these are all the dominant males that we currently have in Djuma. Now, I know a lot of you are asking, but you've forgotten about Hosana and Tamba. No, I have not forgotten about Hosana and Tamba. Don't you worry. They are just unfortunately not dominant males, and so I left them for last. This is what we have a map of dominant individuals at the moment, and ones that we know are producing cubs as well as scent marking. Now, in terms of Hosana and Tamba, I will jump into that after we send you across to Byron and his best friend, the elephant. Well, Ashwatandi is having a little vacation in Torchwood for a while all of this plays out, and it certainly is days of our lives. Now, one thing that's nice about being in the tent is that you get to see the feeds, and I just saw that buffalo recently with its tail on top of its back, and it reminded me of Brent Leo Smith and his hair bun that he sometimes has on his head. Don't tell him I said that, because he'll be very upset with me. But it did look a little bit like Brent's little band bun that he's got. So anyway, back to leopards. Let's get into more serious things. The last time we spoke about this, we were talking about Hosana and Tamba and the fact that I hadn't put them on. So there is a reason why they're not here. Like I said, they're not territorial individuals. But I will show you where Hosana and Tingana are currently hanging out. Tamba are currently hanging out, and why they're in the areas that they are. So because of Tingana's decreased territory that we see here, we're having a situation where Hosana is pretty much hanging out in that area like that. That is all just where H is. Hosana, he's doing a little loop around. He used to come all the way up into kind of central Djuma, but it's been a long time since we've seen him at Treehouse. He does every now and then kind of come here, but his core area is Twin Dams, Little Gari, where the Treehouse Dam is somewhere over here, and then there is also, Chitwa Dam. So that's his kind of area that he's hanging around. Tamba's a little bit different. Tamba, he doesn't really have an area where he's hanging about like Hosana. Tamba, to give you an idea of where he's being seen, he was seen here the other day. He's been seen up here. He gets seen on Djuma, as we know, around Quarantine lately, and he's been seen all the way down here. So this is where Tamba moves. As he goes up like this, he comes past Chitwa, he comes up into Torchwood, he then crosses into Djuma, up into Manyeleti, then he came down, then he went like this, all the way along Simbambili, to Elephant Plains, in which case he came along back like this, straight across, made a kill over here during the National Geographic TV shows, and then from there nobody knew where he was, and then all of a sudden, boom, he was back at Djuma over here, and this is where he's kind of been localized. So his actual area in the last sort of week has been there. So that's where T is at the moment. But you can see he's got far-ranging movements, and that's going to just expand and expand and expand until he finds himself a territory. And it's exactly what happened with Sindile. So I was saying Sindile was last seen there, but we know from when he had the collar on that Sindile's movement started to get bigger and bigger, and his circle got wider and wider and wider, and eventually he just distributed out and found himself a territory. And so that is exactly what you're seeing from Tumba at the moment. He's trying to find himself a spot in this chaos that we see here. I mean, if you think about the size of this area, now to give you an idea, if you look on the mountain cam in the Mara, you're pretty much watching from that mountain cam, you are watching this whole section. All of these leopards would fit pretty much in what that camera sees. That's just to give you an idea of how much space we're dealing with. This whole section here is about 8,000 hectares or 16,000 acres, and that's how many male leopards we've got that we know of. Now, I say that we know of because there was another random male leopard that was seen recently. Nobody knows who he is. I've asked for the guys to try and send me some pictures to see if we can get a facial shot. There was one photo of him from behind from the Nkoro guys, and they believed it was Kunyuma. Since the kind of photo came out, lots of spot patterns have been done, and it doesn't seem like it is Kunyuma, which means that there was a random male that was sighted over here. So that's random male. It's upside down. I do apologize. But that's where a random male was seen, and you can only think if it's going to be like Hukumuri, who was a random male to start and seen in funny places, that he's going to end up being over there. Who knows what he's going to do? Maybe he's going to sandwich his way in this gap between Kunyuma, Quarantine, and Hukumuri as it stands. Now, there is one other leopard that everybody has been asking about and wondering what's going on, and that is Mvula. Now, Mvula, unfortunately, we don't know where he is. We don't know what's happened to him, but my gut feel is that he's no longer with us. And I say that with a heavy heart, but the reason why I say that is because the condition that he was in when he was last seen is atrocious. He was not looking good at all. He was literally just a skeleton with some skin on him, and the fact of where he was and that he hasn't been seen since then is not a good indication. Mvulo is a relaxed enough leopard that in the last month he should have been seen somewhere. His last kind of time he was seen was when I was just before I went on leave last, and he was seen down here. So that was Mvula's last sighting in that area, and that means that he was the last position he was seen, and that was quite some time ago, and he hasn't really been seen again in very poor condition. So the chances of him still being alive, I don't think is very good. It's a sad thing to think about, because that's a real old friend that I've had many, many amazing sightings with. So kind of makes me a bit sad to think about that, but you never know. Maybe somehow he's managed to avoid it and he's come through it, but I doubt it, given that we haven't seen him. Good. So that wraps the male leopards up, and I say good not because of Mvula, but because we've gotten through all of our males. So what we'll do is we'll ditch the male sheet, and then we will get the females out, and at the end I'll put them next to each other. And like I say, if you guys want to just compare them to the last time I did this, that would be nice. While we try and draw another map and try and get the females up and all of that, let's send you back across, I think, to Byron. I'm not sure. Either you're going to get a ponytail or you're going to get short, curly, black hair. I'm not sure which one, but either one, I'm sure we'll laugh and have a good timer with you, all of you. Eating impalas, most of them anyway, and it would be nice if we could find some of them on Impala at some stage soon to catch up with some of our females that are not around. Right, so we've drawn our map again. Please excuse the sizes of these areas are not right, and neither are the shapes. Vessels is most definitely not a thin line like that, but I forgot about it, and so I had to add it in quickly, and various other things are not quite right about this, so I do apologize, but you'll get the idea of the general kind of gist of what's going on here. Right, so you might have noticed though on my new map that I've drawn, I've even been fancy and I've added little water points, because water holes are important to our females' territories, and also for you guys just to get a reference of where some of these places are, because I know a lot of the time we talk about Swamili Dam or something like that, and it's difficult for you to conceptualize exactly where that is. So it's just I'm going to show you roughly the dams around us so that you can get an idea of where these things are when we talk about them. Anyway, let's start off with, the most sort of central leopard to Djuma at the moment, which is obviously Thandi and her cub, and they are the ones that have been around Djuma the most. What I'm going to start with is, this is Gari Dam over here. So we've got Gari Dam in the middle, Buffelshoek Dam on the top, Treehouse and Twin Dams. When she first had her cub, this is the original den site, was over there. She then subsequently went down a little bit this way to Nyala Road South, and then she shifted right into the middle, which is where she had it for a long time on the Mulawati area and then around Philemon's Dip area, and then she kind of pushed up and moved. What we know from Thandi so far is this is kind of roughly the area she's been spending a lot of time kind of moving around in and kind of hanging about in. So this has been her sort of movement over the last little bit. So that's all Thandi over there, plus cub. Now, Tandian cub is interesting because there's been very few sightings of Tandian cub recently. As soon as Hukumuri showed up on the scene, her movement pattern changed completely. She went from a relaxed individual on Juma that spent a massive amount of time moving in a very small area to an individual that completely changed her behavior. We saw her go from here to Buffelshoek Dam and then straight south and into Little Gari and then pushed off into Chitwa. And the last time she was seen prior to this morning was here at Chitwa Camp. So she was seen right there on the edge of the dam and her trucks were going into Torchwood. So it seems like what she's doing is now shifting her cub and herself into this area and pushing a little bit more. So she's extending her territory now into that section. So she's added a little bit more, which I'll just highlight over there, and that's because I think Tingana is spending a lot of time there. Now, Rebecca, if you can just repeat that, it didn't come through very clearly for me. So, female leopards can roam freely through the male's territories if they are being mated by that male, and that's from Caesar. So Caesar, yes, they can kind of come through and move around in a male's territory. We know that Tandi moved freely in Tingana's territory, so did Shadow, so did Kuchava, so they were kind of protected by him, and so yes, they moved freely and they mated with him, and so he was happy to look after them. When it comes to a new male, so Hukumuri, then things change quite a bit, and I'll get into that shortly because we're going to get into Shadow after we come back, and so I'm going to send you off to Byron, who's got the lines, and hopefully they are starting to wake up, and they're actually in an area where Shadow might pop up if she is around. Picasso, no, I don't think so. This is more like kindergarten drawing. In fact, I think I'm joining the realms of James in some of the shapes that I've done here. And you can see a lot has happened since you were last year. And the reason why is because we're running out of light. And so I just thought I'd populate a lot of it, and then I'll explain what I've written and add the names as we go. So, without further ado, let's get through all of this. Now, Shadow and Not Barbara is who I said we will discuss next and why they are interesting. This outer section here that's got the red lines all the way through it, this is where Shadow and Barbara used to hang around last year. This was their territory, roughly what I drew last year. And you can see that their entire movement has come this way. So they have shifted east with the disappearance of Karula, and they have come into this section. Now, you might think that Shadow's section is very large in comparison to Tandi's. Again, this is not in scale. Hoffman should be like this, and so the sections are actually very similar. So Tandi and Shadow, all of these leopards have very similar size to Tandi and Cub. That's about the right scale. The rest of this is completely out of scale. So please don't quote me. If somebody can send me a higher resolution version of a map of this sector, I will do this digitally, and I'll maybe see if we can do a blog post or something, and you guys can get the maps with a much better, proper digital version of it. But anyway, let's get through it. So Shadow and Not Barbara, they've pushed further east with the the disappearance of Karula. With the arrival of Hukumuri, they have completely vanished. We don't know where they are at the moment. Nobody has seen these guys for over 3 weeks. All right. These two were last seen somewhere down in the bottom of Little Gari in the Mulawati drainage line, and then apparently seen on Hoffman's a little bit after that. But nobody can confirm this Hoffman sighting or this Little Gari sighting with pictures. So I'm skeptical at both of these. And the reason why I'm skeptical is because both of them were apparently just Shadow. And so it was a situation where Shadow was just moving around and kind of doing her own thing. So I don't know if it would be just Shadow. What worries me about this situation the most is that the last time I had tracks for these two, or what I think was tracks for these two, was in this spot right here. The next morning, I found Hukumuri in that exact same spot, to Treehouse Dam. So he moved up like this, and at Treehouse Dam was where we found him, and he was kind of salivating and not looking as though he was tolerating anything. And I wonder if he maybe didn't bump into these two on a kill here somewhere, and maybe something has happened to Not Barbara. I don't know. But it's all obviously speculation, but she has definitely moved, and she is not around as much as we normally see her. The thing about Shadow is there's no reason to panic yet, because Shadow does this sometimes. She does disappear for long periods of time, especially if there's a threat around. She'll just go off the radar, and we really struggle to find her. But essentially, this is where Shadow is now pushing. She's pushing further and further east towards Treehouse Dam on Little Gari and Twin Dams on Juma. And in fact, this whole section here, you can see this green line that's cutting through it. I'll get into that next, because this green block that you see here is the Shadulu female. So Shadulu has also made a serious move with Hukumuri. As Hukumuri's territory has extended more towards the east, and he's come into Djuma. So you can see the lines for her. She's all heading up and sort of northeast into Djuma and away from the bottom where she started. When she was born, this is where she was born down here. This is where her mother hangs around. So this is the mother's territory over there. Obviously, it's a lot larger than that. She then was seen a lot around this dam here. This is called Big Dam, which is on Arathusa Private or Shirley's property. And she hung around here for about 3-4 months last year. And then she's slowly but surely pushing up onto the southern side of Arathusa Airstrip and then now up into Djuma and into this area. So her movement is all coming east, same as Tundi, same as Shadow. It seems as everybody's pushing east as Tingana is going east and so Hukumuri is coming east. So you can see the effects what a male leopard has on females. It's not the male leopards that are, the female leopards having an effect on the males at the moment. It's the opposite way around as the change is occurring. So this is all Shadulu that is in here at the moment, and seems as though she's also making an advance towards Djuma. You've then got 2 circles on this side. These 2 circles are for leopards that we don't see. The blue circle is for Tiani. Her territory is very small after Salesh died, and she's just expanding out. So hers is going in every direction at the moment outwards. That could also be why Shadulu is pushing further to the east. And the red circle is her sister Insele, not from the same litter. Insele is a much older sister, but come from the same mother, and she's now pushing further to the west as Tiani is expanding out. So that's the kind of breakdown of the western leopards and what's going on. But you can see a very definite shift as Tingana has receded. Anderson being very solid means that none of the leopards here are really pushing too much out of their territories. But as Tingana is receding, and so Hukumuri is coming in, so all of our leopards are shifting to the east. Right, so we'll get into the last little phase of it, which is the southeastern leopards after this, but we're going to send you back across, I think, to Byron, who's with the Nkuhuma Pride. I've headed back into the tent because unfortunately we lost light completely, which means that we're in a situation where we have to finish inside, because otherwise you will not see a single thing that I'm doing, and I will just become like a ghost, much like our leopards have been this afternoon. Right, back to the map. So I filled in a few more things. I just wanted to add Moya in here because Moya is another female that hangs around in this area. It's also why Shadulu might be pushing up a bit. She's getting pressure from Ingrid Dam and Moya at the bottom. So Ingrid Dam is the mother, Moya over there. Now we come up to the eastern side. So as I've been saying, everybody's shifting east. And what does that mean now for everybody else in this map? Up here in Buffelshoek, I keep getting reports from all of the landowners and the sort of guys that drive there that there's 2 different females that are seen up there. Nobody knows who they are. They don't even stop for 1 second. All they do is see a vehicle and they're bolting. So no one knows who they are. They just know that they're females, and there seems to be 2 different ones that apparently they see. Whether or not this is the same female, I have no idea, but apparently one is on the northern side of Buffelshoek, the other one is around Torchwood Kruger boundary and into a little bit of Buffelshoek over there and around up even towards the Manuleti Kruger Park corner. The one that we do know that is in Torchwood, which is where Tundi is now heading and which one she's going to start encroaching on quite a lot, is Nkanyeni. Now Nkanyeni, again, like I say, these are not long territories. Actually, most of them are quite wide territories, but because I don't have a wide piece of paper, so I've drawn these very poorly. But Nkanyeni used to hang around in Torchwood excessively. She used to be always in this area, and you used to find that she used to hang around kind of the southern section, and then she used to go into Nkoro, a little bit into Cheetah Plains and back again. What seems like it's happened is now that Tundi is shifted this way, and also that Kuchava, which is this blue one in here, so we'll get it Kuchava, just write that in there. Kuchava. All right. Now that Kuchava's in there, it means that Nkanyeni's pushed a little bit further east, and she's currently got a cub. So she is not on her own. Nkanyeni is with a cub, and they are currently sitting around here. There's a drainage line that runs here called the Rupapi, and they're in the Rupapi drainage line and kind of pushing more into Kruger and back a little bit into Cheetah Plains as well. But this is where Nkanyeni is, and I know a lot of you know her, so that's quite nice that you can get an update on her, and she has 1 cub, which is quite nice. Right, so Rebecca, you love Nkanyeni the most? Excellent, I'm so glad. I'm sorry that my favorite leopard, Tundi, is pushing your favorite leopard away. That's the way it goes. We'll talk about it later, exactly. So Nkanyeni there, hanging out, going into Nkoro, Cheetah Plains, and a little bit into Mala Mala, which is very typical for Nkanyeni. That's kind of the way that she moves around. Kuchava has now inserted herself in here. She apparently has cubs in there, which is a drainage line over this side somewhere. How many cubs is unknown, so we don't know how many cubs at the moment, but apparently somewhere in that there's a Nets waterhole right here. and she's just off the waterhole in a drainage line section. She comes up to Chitwa Dam a little bit into this area if she's mating with Tingana, but obviously hasn't done that for a while, and then she goes back and into the sort of Chitwa Nets cut line, that area over there, and hangs around. Now, the interesting one who has basically kind of sort of been a surprise in all of these female territories is this circle over here, which is a female called Sibui. So I'll try and write it. I'm sorry, it's upside down. Sibui plus 2 cubs, brand new ones. So they are also denning in this area over here. So somewhere there is where they're denning. Now, Sibui moves around in this section, and she's a new addition to this whole system, and I wonder if she's going to push Kuchava up. And that's why I worry about Shadow, is because there's all these leopards going on, but Shadow is not making an appearance, and Sibui is pushing further north. Kuchava seems to be coming further west, and that means that Shadow is not marking territory as much as she should be, which is very interesting. Right, that basically concludes the female leopards. I mean, there's a lot to talk about on here, and there's a lot more we could get into, but like I say, we are running out of time a bit, so I will address more questions about it at any stage. If anybody wants to ask them, they're more than welcome to. But while we kind of contemplate the females and their movement around town, let's send you back across to Byron, who I believe is staring at the moon, I think.